Obviously, most of your time is going to be spent in the viewport space. The default is to show 4 simultaneous views: the top, the front, the right, and a perspective view. Double-clicking on any of these names will maximize that viewport. And then you can toggle between full screen views with the tabs down below. Going back to the 4 screen is just double-clicking again. These can also be controlled in the Viewport Layout tab, which gives you some other options. Below the Viewport tabs and along the bottom row, we have what is called the status bar. There are a couple of important settings here that you can click on or off. First of all, Grid Snap. Let's go into top view, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see this a bit more clearly. When Grid Snap is selected, the input will always be aligned with your grid, right? You can see that I'm not able to select in between it. It just jumps quickly from one space to the next. I usually leave this off. That limit feels overly restrictive to me, although sometimes it does have its benefits. And when I click it off, you can see that now I'm able to choose points that are in the middle of squares. The option next to it is Ortho, and you can see that this will immediately lock your orientation into one of the 4 orthogonal directions. And you have these little white hatch marks that indicate where those orthogonal directions are. Again, this is a setting that I would normally leave off because there is a keyboard shortcut to activate this ortho mode. If you hold Shift, you can see that this crosshair, the white hatch marks, come back, and my inputs are again locked into ortho. And I release Shift, and it lets me be free. So I can draw as I please, lock in ortho if I want to make sure it's vertical, and then release it to let it open. When I press this button, even the highlight in the status bar does go bold, so you can see visually that it's also activated. What's additionally useful is that I don't have to hold it the entire time. So if I want to, let's say, have an ortho here, I can hold Shift, and now I just click Tab, and you can see it's kind of changed. So the white line has become the horizontal line. I've let go of both keys now, but it's locked into this horizontal orientation. By the way, hitting Tab a second time will lock the distance. So now it's a set distance, but I can put it at any angle, and hitting Tab a third time will release all of those locks. The Shift shortcut works also in reverse. If I have ortho on, I can hold Shift and release it. So that works both directions. The next one we're going to look at is OSnap. And OSnap is short for Object Snap. This gives you options for your cursor to snap to the objects in the scene, which helps with alignment and modeling precisely. For example, I left this polyline unfinished if I wanted to have it as a closed shape. Without the OSnap, I could kind of draw a line segment like this. But if I zoom in, you can see that they don't actually meet. This could cause a problem for laser cutting, or if you're printing at a larger size and that gap becomes visible on the page. With OSnap turned on, and particularly with endpoints selected, let's turn everything off and just pick endpoint, and see that it immediately jumps to that endpoint. The same way that Grid Snap snaps to the grid, OSnap snaps to your objects. Now, no matter how closely I zoom in, it's connected. And if we hit join, it will also be a valid close curve. Normally, the first 7 of these are quite useful. Endpoint, near, point, mid, center, intersection, and perpendicular are especially useful. There are times when they might conflict. So if I want to take a point on this curve, but it's occasionally jumping to the center, that might cause some conflicts. But this panel is always here on the left side of the screen. And so it's very easy to just come over, deselect, and now we don't have that interference of center. Another great use of the OSnap is when you want to align things, even if they're not exactly touching. So for example, if I want to draw a line out from this corner here, and I want it to go straight out as far as this corner, I'll hold Shift so that it is working in ortho. And then I'm going to hit Tab so that it locks into this horizontal direction, and I don't have to continue holding it while I find this corner. And with OSnap on, it's jumping to the end. but the curve itself is limited in the direction that I indicated. Tapping Alt will toggle off the OSnap in the same way that tapping Shift toggled off Ortho. So we have here snapping to the corner, and if I press Alt, it releases it. You can see that this has gone gray and that OSnap is no longer highlighted in the bottom status bar. And I release Alt and it's back on. SmartTrack is a kind of next level OSnap because it finds alignments in your model geometry. So for example, if I'm drawing off of this point, you can see it has picked up some sort of ortho alignment. It also picked up a kind of perpendicular here. I don't think this one is as useful because it's harder to predict, and sometimes you end up waiting a while for it to find exactly which alignment it is that you wanted. But it can be useful sometimes. Planar really becomes important when you move into 3D. If I start a line from the top corner of this box here, and I want to continue it outward, you can see in the front and right views that it's actually projecting it to the zero plane. If I wanted to make it parallel to the box, coming off this edge, I could go to the endpoint here, hit Tab, and use this orientation lock. Now you can see from the right view that my line is moving horizontally, perfectly flat, and it's not going to the zero plane. However, if I just want to draw freely at this level, this is where planar becomes useful. It will let me draw all around, and you can see it's locking to the plane, which is parallel to the grid shown in this view, right? But at the height of where I started the curve. So anytime that I'm drawing with planar on, it will give me a shape like that. If I turn planar back off, you can see immediately it's dropping down, or it's projecting onto the zero plane down below. Filter is an interesting one. This does not have to do with the drawing, but it has to do with selection. I haven't used this much myself because it wasn't really conveniently located in Rhino 7. If you're using Rhino 7, you probably won't see this, this panel here. But I think it is actually quite useful. This menu allows you to determine which kind of objects are selectable. So if I wanted to grab just the curves and not these surfaces, I can deselect surface polysurface and then press Control A, which is select all, Sel all. You can see only the curves got selected, and the boxes and the cone are left out. There are a lot of other selection tools, like Select All, that can make your life a lot easier once your models get more complex. They almost all start with Sel, and so typing SEL gives you a list of those commands. You can see here that we could have used Sel Curve instead of using our filter, and this would have picked just the curves in the scene. These commands are also under the Select tab, as we saw in the last video. Here you have Select Curves, for example, but also more exotic commands like Sel Brush. If I make everything selectable again, the brush lets you kind of drag a thing, and everything that gets crossed gets picked. Finally, a last thing about selection methods. The default behavior for Rhino is different if you're dragging left to right versus right to left. Left to right is called region selection, and any object has to be entirely within it. So right here we can see that the first box should be inside of this blue rectangle, but the cone and the second box are not, right? And so they're not selected. Right to left is a select crossing. And here, anything that is even partially inside the box will be selected. So I have not completely selected this first box, but it will become selected. You can see the difference when you go left to right, the outline is solid, and when you go right to left, the outline is dashed. Like most other software, you have the ability to shift and click and add things to your selection, and hold Control and click and remove them from your selection.